Awesome. All right, I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic, and welcome everyone. So where we're going to be picking up today is on the very, very bottom of page 9. But as we were doing the introductions, there was a number of people here on day 1. And where we left off last week is actually perhaps a beautiful place to at least review. For those that are new, for those that are coming back, for those that maybe don't know what Alcoholics Anonymous is and what do I need to do in order to get sober, to stay sober. So I'm just going to review it a little bit. But some of y'all know I'd have a hard time not reviewing it anyways. Woo! All right, so last we left off is Bill Wilson. He's sitting alone drinking at his kitchen table. Now Rob's going to be like, hey, it actually didn't happen that way. I know. The story of the kitchen table wasn't really at the kitchen table. But again, when we hear of the stories in Alcoholics Anonymous and we maybe hear that, hey, wait, it didn't quite happen that way. The history of Alcoholics Anonymous is a parable. That is a story that is meant to convey a meaning, a lesson, something to learn from. And the lesson is that one alcoholic can help another alcoholic one-on-one. And that's the meaning. So for us entering the world of the parable, Bill Wilson, he is drinking at his kitchen table. And who shows up but Ebby? And so if you were here last week, you know Throckmorton Thatcher. Throckmorton is Ebby Thatcher's middle name. You don't need to write that down. You'll probably remember that one. But he's sitting there and he's drinking at the kitchen table and his old drinking buddy, Ebby Thatcher, shows up. And Ebby Thatcher drank with Bill. And Bill knew that Ebby Thatcher was an alcoholic. He knew he was as bad as Bill was. But he stands before him 2 months sober. The light is on in his eyes. There is a glow about his spirit. There is a solution in front of him. And on the bottom paragraph of page 9, Ebby Thatcher brings Bill Wilson the 2 vital pieces of information that I need to know in order to stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson had already been introduced to the first. So the first vital piece of information that I need to know in order to achieve sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous is I need to know what my problem is. I need to know what does it mean to be an alcoholic. Now, to have alcoholism. Bill Wilson, he showed up at the town's hospital a couple times. He met Dr. Silkworth, and he learned what it meant to be an alcoholic. To have alcoholism is to have 2 symptoms. The first is the allergy of the body, and if you're here today, you probably know what that's like. And what that is like is I take a drink, and there's something inside of me that sets off, and it tells me I need more. And the more that I drink, the louder that more gets. See, I don't know about you, but I start to drink and I need that next drink far more than I needed that first. See, I start to drink and I can't control the amount that I take. I start to drink and I cross these lines in the sand I said I would never cross. I do these things I said I would never do. I hurt people in ways I never wanted to hurt people. And so that is the allergy of the body. And what that means is that if I have experiences of my life where I know what it is like to start drinking and to lose all control, what that means is that there will never be a time when I can ever safely drink again. Now, the second part of our illness is the obsession of the mind. And if you're here back on day 1, you know what this is. The obsession of the mind is the thought that we have when we're sober that says this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. You know, my problem is I was drinking with all those guys in the UK. Woo, there's a whole lot of drunks over there, but I'm going to go drink with Tom. There's no alcoholics in Calgary. You know, it looks like a thought that is on me all day that says, take a drink. Take a drink, take a drink, take a drink, until what little willpower I was able to muster is eroded away. But just as much as it looks like a case of the suddenlies, I'm out there living my life. I got a drink in my hand and I don't know how it happened. And if you're here today and you're coming back, you're on day 1. The relapse is not because you're bad, not because you didn't want it enough, not because you weren't trying hard enough, not because you are immoral, not because you are broken, not because you are weak. You drank because you have alcoholism. That is alcoholism. And that is the power of this illness. And from his trips to the town's hospital, he learned the hopeless nature of this illness. So step 1 is the concession that I have the allergy, that I can never ever safely drink again, but also that I have the obsession and that I will drink again. Now, who is before him but Abby Thatcher? And Abby Thatcher brings him knowledge of the solution. So if you're here today, there is a solution. We have a solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have one that works. And that solution is the spiritual awakening, the spiritual experience. We spoke about how that piece of information came from a gentleman by the name of Roland Hazard. And he met with Dr. Carl Jung. And he worked intensively with this doctor only to drink again. And he goes back and he's like, dude, what the heck? And he's like, I'm sorry I misdiagnosed you. People like you do not recover. Alcoholics do not get well, except in a few rare instances. Here and there, once in a while, these alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. And that is our solution. Now, Roland Hazard, he goes and he helps our boy, Throckmorton, Abby Thatcher. He doesn't have to be your boy. He's my guy. Woo! Throckmorton. Now, Abby Thatcher, he's got some impetus. And so Roland Hazard, Throckmorton, Abby Thatcher, they get involved in the Oxford group. And the Oxford group had a series of actions that any human being could take that would lead a surrendered life. A life that was given over to a power greater than themselves. And that course of action is what became our 12 steps. So in this moment, Bill Wilson has the 3 pieces of information. He knows his problem, the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body, the hopeless nature of this illness. And before him, he knows what the solution is. We're going to see he's not liking it. He's not excited about it. But the solution is the spiritual awakening. And in this moment, he knows how to get from the hopelessness of step 1 to the solution in step 12, what later became our 12 steps. And it goes on to say this was 2 months ago. 2 months ago. So if you're here today, you're coming back, you're counting days. The message of hope is that it does not take long to recover. It does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have the light on in your eyes, the hope in your spirit, to be free from the feelings, the emotions, the pain, and the suffering that is gripping us by our chest and dragging us down. Man, we can get freedom quickly. The bad news is it's going to take work. So just gonna be level with you. That's the deal. It's going to take some work. So it says, he had come to pass, very bottom line of page 9. He had come to pass his experience along to me if I cared to have it. So the experience is the spiritual awakening, and how he got that was through the actions that later became our 12 steps. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. Now, if we're writing in our book today, and I have it on good authority that that's what all the cool kids are doing, unless you're driving, in which case the cool kids are safe on the road. Brian's parked. Don't worry about it. And so we want to emphasize the word hopeless, because it is only when I am able to see my hopelessness that I am willing to accept the hope that is on offer. And now as we dive into this part of the book, this is Bill Wilson essentially wrestling with the second step. Before the second step is even a thing. You know what I mean? He's fighting this idea of a power greater than himself. And so again, if you're here today and you're like, man, I don't know about that, all that higher power stuff, you are not alone. We can see if our experience matches Bill. And what's going to happen is Abby Thatcher is he's going to present some evidence, he's going to share some stuff, and his parry will be riposte with Bill's response of, but no, and what we'll do is, and so he's fighting him on it. It's like a fencing match. They are fighting back and forth, and we will see this back and forth with Bill Wilson. We're going to see Bill Wilson be closed to this idea, and then open, and then closed, and then open. And so it says, he talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays way over there on the hillside. So he can hear the preacher's voice. Where is he? On the hillside. He's not in church. I just want to put that. He can overhear it, but he's not sitting in the pews. So we're seeing where he's a little bit close. He's not in church, but he could hear it. And it says, there was the proffered temperance pledge I never signed. And I can tell that what Rob is going to do, no pressure if that's not what you're doing, but I can tell you're looking for it. What he's going to put in the chat is an image of a temperance pledge. And a temperance pledge was a pledge that people would sign, that I will never touch alcohol. I will never drink. It was a pledge that was signed. Now, if you grow up kind of in the 90s, you might have had the DARE program, where it's like, sign that I'm never going to touch drugs. I'm never going to do that. Or if you also, I'm a little old for this, but if you guys remember, like the Jonas Brothers, they would have those purity rings and they'd be like, oh, I'm not going to do no hanky panky. I'm going to be good. It's like that. Like, I promise I'm going to be good and never drink. Now, yeah, proffered means accepted. So, and temperance is that abstinence. And what I want to point out is he was offered the pledge that you will never drink alcohol. Bill Wilson, he's not signing that bad boy. He's not even bothering. And then it says, my grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folks and their doing. So what we're talking about is Bill Wilson's grandparents, and he was raised by his maternal grandparents, essentially, and they had a profound effect on his life. But his paternal grandfather had a remarkable experience that we're going to talk about. So his grandfather, what he's saying is his grandfather was like, some of these religious people, they're a little hypocritical. And so he had some good-natured, just a little good-natured judgment. But it goes on to say his insistence that the spheres really had their music. And so what that means, the spheres having their music, very literally was a theory that as the planets orbited around their axis and rotated around the sun, that they made an audible noise. And so turns out that's true. And if you just want to ruin your day, you can look up the sound of Saturn. It's terrifying. And actually, if you want to pull a prank on somebody, you just hide a speaker somewhere and play the sound of Saturn. It's a day ruiner is what that is. It is, it's not good. Don't play that for meditation music. Or do what you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But that idea that the spheres really had their music is that idea that there is a rhythm to the universe, that there is a spirit to the universe. And so that is where Bill Wilson's grandfather was open. And it says, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. So Bill Wilson's paternal grandfather had this belief that came from an experience. So he's not into this certain organized religion. He believes what he believes based on what he experienced. It says his fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past. They made me swallow hard. And so when Bill Wilson's grandfather was dying, in a moment where it might be easy to seek some spiritual comfort and to accept maybe some last rites or some of the rituals of an organized religion, Bill Wilson's paternal grandfather said, no, I believe what I believe. And he stood by that. And so Bill Wilson's paternal grandfather was an alcoholic. He struggled with drinking, and Rob will correct me if I'm wrong. Some of you know I don't stand much, but I always stand to be corrected. But his paternal grandfather owned an inn, and they had a pub, and it was something like Mount Aeolus tavern and whatnot. Now, his grandfather was an alcoholic, and his grandfather climbed. There's a Mount Aeolus in Vermont. There's also one in Alberta. I'm not one of those climbing mountains Albertans. That's not what I do. I don't do well on a steep incline. I roll. But there's this mountain, and I will say it's again, from Calgary, It's a little bit of a hill, but I mean, if you're in the state of New York, it's a mountain. Or Vermont, it's a mountain. Don't let me tell you otherwise. But he climbs to the top of this mountain, Mount Aeolus, and he is a powerful spiritual experience. And from that moment, he quit drinking, and he stayed sober. And an interesting thing we're going to talk about. Now, I'm spoiling it because in case y'all don't come back. But please do. It's fun when we hang out together. And I love you guys. But what happened is when Bill Wilson has his spiritual experience, in his mind's eye, he sees himself on the top of a mountain. And there is a clean wind that blows through him, not of air, but of spirit. And you'll notice that I'm likely butchering the pronunciation of the word Aeolus. And Mount Aeolus was named after the Greek god of the wind. And it's one of those things that, when I study the history or when I butcher the history and add my little spice in there, what I've found is that we experience the presence of a power greater than ourselves. So if you're here today and you're like, man, I'm not here for the God stuff. Like, step 2, you're expecting me to be jazzed. You're expecting me to walk hand in hand on the beach with God. And it's like, well, I'm in Alberta. We don't got beaches. But we expect that I have this sort of step 2. I have this spiritual limerence. I'm wanting this experience of this power greater than myself. It is fine if you're struggling with the idea, if you're closed to the idea. The second step is only about believing that a spiritual experience could be possible. I don't need to understand it. In fact, I can't understand it in step 2. We're going to experience it in step 12. And so that is where Bill Wilson is closed. He's got his riposte, no. And then we're going to see him open up. It says that wartime day in old Winchester Cathedral came back. And you can make a note to go back to page 1. We don't have to bounce there. But if you were here with us, you remember page 1, what happened to Bill in Winchester Cathedral. He was sitting in that cathedral, and he was riddled with fear of what lay ahead. The fear of he was going to go and fight in the First World War. And he was terrified to die, terrified of what lay before him. But just as much was he terrified of being seen as a coward, of what people thought of him. And he was riddled with fear. And he's sitting in that cathedral, and he has this moment where he feels the presence of a power, and that fear falls from him. And so what opens Bill Wilson up but his experience? And so that is what happened on page 1. Right when it says, much moved, I wandered outside. And so we're going to see him opening up. He says, I'd often believed in a capital P power. And I point out these capitalizations because when we see capitalizations, these are words that I can use for God. See, God, it doesn't have to be the name. God is the title that is pointing to the power. And I can look beyond the name to experience the power. And if you're like, I don't like that 3-letter G-O-D word, wonderful, don't use it, use power. These are synonyms that we can use. It says, I had always believed in a capital P power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are. And what he's pointing to is the idea that to be an atheist requires faith. An atheist has faith that there is no God, higher power, creator, a spirit of the universe. And he describes that because he says, for that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. It came from nothing, goes to nothing. It's this going on to this destiny of nothingness. And he says, my intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. And so what we're seeing is Bill Wilson, and there's talks of Bill Wilson where he talks about his first higher power was the God of science. He sees the science of physics, of chemistry, of biology, even of evolution, which was a very controversial topic in that era. And he's saying the fact that we can measure these forces, The fact that with gravity, you can measure gravity with reliability. The fact that plants tend to grow based on the Fibonacci number sequence. The fact that there is something moving beneath what we see in the universe. How could I say there is no power beneath it? So his God was essentially a God of almost science, a spirit of the universe. It says, despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. So he's open to the spirit of the universe. How could there be so much precise and immutable law and no intelligence? How could we measure the rate at which an object falls consistently and nothing be beyond that, beneath that? How could there be that and nothing like moving it? He said, I simply had to believe in a capital S, capital U, spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation, but that was as far as I had gone. So we are seeing Bill Wilson wide open. And what he does not know yet is that this is more than enough for a second step. But here, let's watch. Let's watch him get shut up. It says, with ministers in the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who has love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. What are the theories of a power greater than ourselves that our mind snaps shut against it? Right? So many people talk about, I can't believe in a bearded guy in the sky, like a Santa Claus God who's sitting there with the beard and the staff and sitting in the clouds and is going to judge me. And when I'm bad, I'm getting spiritual coal. And like when I'm good, I'll get my spiritual little present. That's what he's saying. He's like, I'm not open to that conception. So he gets closed and his mind snaps shut. And so again, the riposte. And it says, to Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. Now, I'm going to point something out. Do y'all know what Bill Wilson is doing? He is judging from the gutter. His life is a dumpster fire, and he's in the gutter, and he's like, yeah, that Christ guy, he was okay. He was a good guy, but you know, those religious people, ugh, they're not anything like him. And he's in the gutter and judging. Now, you might not have done that with organized religion. Now, I know you guys come into the One Day at a Time Wednesday Big Book Study, so glad you're here. Would never do this ever, ever, ever. But you know that feeling of judging somebody at a meeting? And judging all of Alcoholics Anonymous based on one silly little drunk. And that silly little drunk's defects of character, you might be like, oh gosh, it's Paige. Ugh, can you believe it? You know? And so judging from the gutter, and I'm going to let you guys know a little secret. It is when I hate myself the most that I'm in the most judgment of others. And you see, I show up to life with this pervasive sense that at the core of who I am, I'm not enough. And I will judge you, and I will look at you, and I will condemn you in my mind. I will criticize you. I will gossip about you so I can get an inch. That's for the Americans. Maybe a centimeter and a half for the rest of us that use the metric. None of that imperial system. But so I can get an inch of just feeling a little bit better. So I can climb up this hierarchy, this ladder, so I can feel just a little bit of relief, and I'll judge you to feel better, and it works for an instant, but if instant gratification was so good, why does it last only an instant and I feel worse? And so I judge to feel better, and I feel worse. And I judge to feel better, and I feel worse. And I judge to feel better, and I feel worse. And the more that I judge, the more that feels abundant. And that it feels like everybody is judging me, and it fuels my fear of judgment. And here's the thing. If you're here today and you're judging me, I think I can't remember what meeting I spoke about this, but I spoke about this a little while ago. But if you're here today and you're judging me and you're like, oh gosh, her enthusiasm, it's a little much. Could you tone it down? Gosh. And it's fine if you judge me. It's not okay if you judge Babe. He's the best. No judging Babe. But if you're like, it's just a little much, what I want you to know, the takeaway, is that's a you problem, not a me problem. It is genuinely when I am consumed with self that I cannot stand people who are full of joy. It is when I hate myself that people who are like comfortable in their own skin, I think they just think they're better than everyone. You know, I know you guys can't relate to that, and showing up at meetings and judging people for that. I know you would never. I'm just talking to no one over here. But here's the trick. The more I give love, the more I give love and acceptance and lift others up and pump their tires and be a safe place for other people, the more that my experience is that is abundant. And the more I experience that true humility, which I'm no better than you, I'm no worse than you, that we are equal and I'm dependent upon a power beyond myself. And that is something we get to experience here. We get to, contingent on the actions that I take. So Bill Wilson, he's in the gutter and he's like, judging, he's pointing his nose down at these guys from the gutter. And if you've ever been in a gutter, I'm a gutter drinker. Actually, some of you are like, no, you're not. You're a dumpster drinker. Accurate. But I'm in the gutter and I'm I got that going on. So it says, his moral teachings, most excellent. He's like, okay, I can see, like, it's like coming to the meetings and be like, okay, I can see that there's some good stuff here. You know, when you're kind of, actually, I'm going to describe something. This doesn't apply to anyone here, but there's often a phase where at like about 30 days sober, we think we need to write a book. You know, I gotta write a book. And then about 90 days sober, we think we're like, I gotta be an addictions counselor. You know what I mean? That little phase, followed by, and God bless if you did write a book or become an addictions counselor. I'll buy your book. Good for you. Like, I'm not judging. And then about 6 months, we get to that. Everyone needs a program, you know? Everyone should have a program. Like those phases, I know, nobody relates to that. It's just me. All right. So he says, moral teaching most excellent. In our case, those steps, they seem like they'd be really good for my mother-in-law, you know, but not for me. And it says, for myself, I adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. Y'all know what that sounds like? Take what you want and leave the rest. And we know that doesn't work. Take what we want and leave the rest is perfect when it comes to my 11th step practice. You don't like we were talking about the serenity prayer before the meeting. You don't like the serenity prayer, don't use it. You don't like the word God, don't use it. You don't like this type of meditation, don't do it. But when it comes to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the 12 steps as they're outlined in this book, the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't have the luxury. If I have alcoholism, I don't have the luxury of picking and choosing what I'm going to do. I've got to do all of this because my step one experience tells me that nothing less than a spiritual experience that I grow and that I deepen for the rest of my life, and I will drink again. So unfortunately, I can't, adopt those parts which seem convenient and the rest I disregard, which is not cool. Because, I don't know if you've seen the course of action. There's a lot of action I got to do. And I know I like inventory, but, I didn't when I started. And amends, gross. So now we're going to see the stranglehold of his getting closed take hold. This next paragraph is describing, if there is a God, why do bad things happen? So it says the wars which had been fought, the burnings and the chicanery. Now, chicanery is very specifically that deceit or that trickery for personal gain, which that religious dispute had facilitated, made me sick. So he's talking about, like, if there is a God, can you explain all the horrors that have happened in the name of other people's gods or the names of religion and the deceit and the trickery? Can you explain all of that? And he says, I honestly doubted whether on balance the religions of mankind had done any good. So he's addressing the horrors that have happened in the name of organized religion. And it says, judging from what I had seen in Europe and since. Now, when we talk about what he had seen in Europe, now he did not experience combat. He did not experience any frontline combat, anything like that. But when he's talking about Europe, he's not talking about a summer backpacking tour. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the First World War. And even though he did not have like a front row seat, he was about as close as you can be without being in the horrors of the trenches. And he would have seen young men like himself be just eaten up by this machine of devastation. There was a loss of life that they had not seen in humanity. That hundreds and thousands of young men were dying for what? A foot of land. This was the first time that chemical warfare was used en masse. I mean, it was horrific. There was a level of PTSD that they had never before been able to see. It was named shell shock. The people that came back, many of them were irrevocably changed and deeply wounded from what they experienced. So he's not talking about like, poor me, my mom didn't get me a pony for summer camp. You know, he is talking, which, I mean, I'm a little upset. No, just kidding. My mom's great. But like, he has got a legitimate reason to talk about this. So what I had seen in Europe, and since the brotherhood of God in human affairs was negligible, he's like, I don't see God. I don't see God working in those horrors in life, and I don't see that. And he says, if there was a capital D, devil, he seemed the capital B, capital U, boss universal. And he certainly had me. And if you know what it's like to have alcoholism, if you know what it is like to drink against your will, if you know what it is like to just pull yourself out of the hole only to dive right back in again and again and again. You know what it is like to feel like maybe you don't believe in devils, and I'm not asking anyone to, but to feel that there is an evil force that is taking my life again and again and again. And that's what Bill Wilson feels. Like if there is a devil, that's who's running the show and that's who's got me and I can't break free. And if you know what that's like, you've experienced that. Like that's where Bill is at. And here is what opens Bill Wilson up again. It says, but my friend sat before me and he made the point blank declaration. And here it is. That God had done for him what he could not do for himself. So with all the baggage that we bring, and we don't ask you to throw out the baggage. In the second step, we just ask you to lay it aside for the moment. And I do mean for the moment, because we will address the baggage. We will address the pain. We will address the trauma. The religious trauma, we'll address all of it in the fourth step. We are not asking you to ignore it. We're asking you, could I believe that there is a power greater than myself? And Bill Wilson is going to have the experience that many of us have. I won't say we all have. Where do I begin to believe? Well, I see you. I see you are happy and sober. There is a light on in your eyes. There's a hope that pervades your spirit. There is a smile. And of course, I am judging you for being all happy and laughing. But I can see that you have something that I don't have. And that you were once like me. That is what we're talking about. So God had done for him what he could not do for himself. What could I not do for myself? Permanent, contented sobriety. That's what I could not do for myself. I could never experience that. Never. And so much more than that. And that's what happens here. You don't have to like God. You don't have to call it God. You don't have to walk hand in hand on the beach. At this point, we just need to believe that there are people who are happy and sober at the same time, that have had this experience, and that maybe, just maybe, I'm not so special, that the miracle that has happened in their life could not happen in mine. His human will had failed. Now we can hold our experience up to that. Has my human will failed? Has all the things that I tried to put between me and the first drink not worked? Have all the things that I tried to put between me and me not worked? You know, when I got a whole lot of me on me and I got nothing that I can put between me and me. It's like bone on bone. It's me on me and it is painful and I'm wrapped up in the bondage of self and I got nothing and I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. Can I relate to feeling like that? Society was about to lock him up. And I'll throw something out there. We don't have asylums as they did back in the day. But if I know what it's like to be in an emergency room, a psych ward, and those are my stomping grounds. I'm a psych ward emergency room sort of gal. Detox center, treatment center, sober living. If I know what it is like where the doors lock and they make you make your bed, then I'm facing what Abby Thatcher was facing. Society was about to lock him up. And then it says, like myself, he had admitted complete defeat. Now, the steps didn't exist in the way that they do now. Yeah, we got the sound of Saturn. Yeah, you can listen to that and have some nightmares. It is delightful. But when it says, like myself, he had admitted complete defeat, that was his step one experience. That complete defeat is that knowledge that there is nothing that I can do in and of myself to put between me and the first drink that I know. That if I don't have a spiritual experience, that I will drink again. That was his step one. And from that place of hopelessness, does he experience the hope. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead suddenly. And I want to emphasize suddenly because it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long to have a spiritual experience. Suddenly, taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known. And I'm always here for my sneakies. You guys know sneaky prayers, sneaky promises, sneaky descriptions of a spiritual awakening, and that is one. A sneaky description of the spiritual awakening, which is a level of life better than the best he had ever known. And it being a level of life also implies that this is a way of life. Oh, what do you mean? It's not a set it and forget it deal? Like I gotta keep doing it? Yeah, can't have that crock pot sobriety where I set it and forget it. I gotta be stir frying this bad boy. I gotta be working it every single day. But that's what we can all experience. It's available to each and every one of us. It says, so it goes on to say, had this power originated in him. So what it's saying when it says, had this power originated in him, was this his willpower? Was this his willpower that was doing it? Obviously it had not. It had not originated in him. There had been no more power in him in that moment than there was, or in him than there was in me in that moment, and that was none at all. So the power was not his power. The power was a greater power that was flowing through him. Bill Wilson, drunk. He is drunk. And again, he's like, let me tell you what I think about God, which God bless Abby Thatcher. Because that is a conversation. There's nothing worse than when you're talking to somebody who's drunk and they want to like argue about God, but Abby Thatcher's sticking it out with them. It's like, oh, God bless. We'll talk tomorrow morning. But that idea that the power isn't his willpower. It is a different power. That when it comes to willpower, they have the same amount of power. One of them is 2 months sober. The light is on. There's a glow in his spirit. The other is drunk. It is this power that flows through him. And what we're going to do in the 12 steps is we're going to clear away all of the stuff that is in me that is blocking me from that power, and that power will flow through me. It said, if that floored me. So again, we're seeing how cracked open he's getting. That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Whoa, he got bowled over. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. Here was something at work in a human heart, which had done the impossible. Again, what is impossible for an alcoholic on willpower, on human power, permanent contented sobriety? And again, it is a reminder that what is opening Bill Wilson up, but not really Abby Thatcher's arguments about God, not his, let me tell you, let me parry your riposte, what is opening him up is the powerful demonstration that lies before him. I am called to be a demonstration of this power, a demonstration of these steps, a demonstration of this way of life. To live my life in such a way that you can see that there is something that is different about who I am. That is what I'm called to, and that is what opens Bill Wilson up to this idea that there could be a power greater than himself. So here is something at work in a human heart. The change happens within, which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. I believe in miracles because I come to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I bear witness to the miracle that is your contented sobriety. I believe in miracles because I am a miracle. There is nothing more miraculous than somebody who is doomed to die a horrific death. Make no bones about it, alcoholism is a horrific disease. It will ravage the life of anyone whose life touches the alcoholic, whether they drink or not. And today, I'm alive and I'm sober and I can put sentences together, which that's its own separate miracle. You know what I mean? That there is a joy, that there is a freedom beyond anything I could have imagined, and that is available to each and every one of us. He says, never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings, but again, Abby Thatcher, he's not yelling. He's not fighting this guy. Who he is and how he is carrying himself in this moment, that is what is doing the shouting. That is the demonstration that at least I am called to be. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. So it's not that he'd taken the same pieces and just moved them around. You know, and maybe you've done this, or maybe you have love. It's easier to see in other people. So I know I've been this person, but I know it's easier for me to see in other people. You know, when you have somebody that is like miserable or negative or like angry, and they do like an anger management class, or they do just a little bit of therapy, and then it's the same pieces just moved around with a little bit of therapy speak on it. You know what I mean? And it's like, like, I'm happy, you know, and it's like, oh, but they're able, like, I'm identifying my feeling. It is anger. That is the emotion. In fact, it's a secondary emotion. You know, I was like, that's great, but you seem a little uptight. But that's not where Abby Thatcher was. It wasn't just about rearranging. It says he was on different footing. So the ground of where he is something completely different. And again, that different footing, I talk a lot about how my foundation cannot be steps 1, 2, 3. There is no foundation in I will drink again. There is no foundation in a solution, but I don't have it. There is no foundation in a decision to go after that solution, but no action. The foundation, the ground, is all 12 steps as a way of life. And it says his roots grasp new soil. So at the depth of who he is rooted and grounded in something new, in something different. And what we're going to see, now I'll be nice to Pep and I'll wrap it up here. I won't go into the next paragraph. But what we're going to see is him get closed again. And then we're going to see what finally opens Bill Wilson up. And we're going to see Bill Wilson take what will later become the second step. And from there, we're going to see him take a course of action that is available to each and every one of us. So with that, that's it for me. Over to you, Peppa. 5 whole minutes to wrap up the meeting. Look at that. If you don't believe in a power greater yourself, there it is. 5 minutes to wrap up already.